The city slept under a heavy blanket of fog, its streets glowing faintly with the dim lamplight. Shadows danced across the cobblestones, curling around walls and alleyways as though alive. No one dared step outside after dark unless they had business with the Moretti family. Among the whispered legends of power and fear, Dante Moretti was the name that commanded silence. Inside the grand hall of the Moretti mansion, the chandeliers hung like frozen stars, casting golden light over the polished marble floor. Guests moved carefully, dressed in their finest gowns and suits, but their smiles were tight. The air was thick with anticipation. For tonight was not only a celebration of Dante's rise to power, but also a subtle warning to anyone who might challenge him. Isabella stood near the edge of the ballroom, her heart beating faster than the music that drifted faintly from the string quartet. She was young, her hair dark as midnight, and her eyes sharp with determination. Tonight, she did not come as a guest. She came as a shadow, a quiet storm moving toward the heart of the lion's den. Her family had been wronged, betrayed, and silenced by the Moretti clan. And though revenge burned quietly in her chest, she had a plan. She watched Dante move across the room with his usual elegance and authority. He was tall, his posture perfect, and his eyes sharp, cutting through the crowd like a blade. He smiled, but it was a dangerous smile, the kind that made people nod and whisper in fear rather than comfort. Even the bravest of the Mafia men hesitated when he spoke. Isabella's lips pressed into a thin line. He was everything she had imagined, and more ruthless, untouchable, and yet, somehow, human. The music swelled, and the room grew silent. Dante raised a hand, and the murmurs faded immediately. "Tonight," he said, his voice smooth, commanding, "we celebrate power, loyalty, and courage. But courage comes with risk." His gaze swept across the room until it landed on Isabella. She felt a chill. His eyes were not the eyes of a man seeing a stranger. They were measuring, evaluating, searching. He walked toward her, each step precise, as though the floor itself bowed beneath his presence. "And you," he said, stopping just a few feet away, "are far too bold to hide in the shadows. Do you dare to step into the light?" Isabella's heart thumped, but her voice was steady. "I dare," she said, though the words felt small in the enormity of the hall. Dante's smile widened, but it was not kind. "Bold words," he said. "But words mean nothing here. Actions speak the truth." He gestured toward the center of the ballroom. "Dance with me." A hush fell over the crowd. Isabella blinked. "Dance?" she asked. "Yes," Dante said, his tone mocking but firm. "If you dance this tango, I'll marry you." The words echoed through the room. Laughter followed, sharp and cruel, bouncing off the marble walls. Guests leaned forward, eager to witness humiliation. "No one has ever survived this challenge," Dante added. "Do you truly think you can?" Isabella's jaw tightened. She understood the weight of his words. It was said that anyone who danced it would reveal their deepest truths, their fears, and their hidden desires. Many had tried. Many had failed. But Isabella did not come here to fail. The music shifted. A low, haunting melody that seemed to rise from the shadows themselves. Isabella stepped forward, her movements careful but purposeful. The crowd held its breath, the air thick with expectation. Dante extended his hand, and she took it, feeling a strange warmth that made her hesitate for just a heartbeat. The moment their hands touched, the room seemed to transform. The golden light of the chandeliers flickered, shadows deepened, and the marble floor beneath them felt less like stone and more like a stage suspended between reality and something else. Isabella's eyes scanned Dante's face. For the first time, she saw not only the confidence of a mafia boss, but the faintest trace of curiosity and perhaps uncertainty. Their first steps were deliberate, the tango's rhythm forcing them to move in perfect unison. Isabella could feel Dante's strength in his posture, his control over every motion. But beneath it, there was tension, a subtle give and take, as though each step was a conversation in itself. The crowd watched, spellbound. As the music rose, so did the intensity of the dance. Isabella felt something stirring within her, a mix of fear, exhilaration, and something she did not yet name. She realized the stories of the tango's curse were not lies. Each movement forced her to confront memories she had tried to bury, the loss of her family, the nights spent hiding, the endless longing for justice. Yet at the same time, she could see pieces of Dante she had not expected, glimpses of pain behind his confident mask, shadows that spoke of loss and loneliness. The audience, initially eager for scandal, began to grow quiet, sensing the change in energy. The dance was no longer a spectacle of mockery. It had become something intimate, dangerous, and strangely beautiful. Isabella twirled, feeling the floor spin beneath her. Dante caught her hand, his eyes locking onto hers. In that instant, words became useless. The dance carried truths neither could speak aloud. Every movement revealed more than pride or skill. It revealed hearts unguarded, fragile beneath layers of power and fear. For a moment, Isabella wondered if she could trust him. Could the man who had taken everything from her family be more than a monster? Could there be a flicker of humanity hidden beneath the cold exterior? And yet, the shadow of her purpose loomed. She could not forget revenge. The final notes of the tango swelled, dramatic and almost mournful. Isabella spun, her dress flaring like fire against the marble. Dante caught her in a firm but careful hold, his eyes searching hers as if trying to uncover the secrets she carried. The room was utterly silent. And then, a movement in the crowd. A shadow detached itself from the edges of the hall, watching her with intent. Isabella's breath caught. Her past had followed her here, a ghost of danger that threatened to undo everything. She sensed it before she saw it fully, someone who had been waiting, someone whose presence meant the night's trial was far from over. Dante's eyes flicked toward the shadow, but he did not release her hand. Instead, he held her tighter, as if to shield her from the unseen threat. For the first time, he did not seem untouchable. He seemed human, vulnerable, even. The music ended. The applause that should have erupted never came. Instead, the room hung in a stunned silence. Isabella and Dante stood together, faces inches apart, both breathing heavily. The dance had not been a performance of skill or grace alone. It had been a battle of truth, a weaving of secrets, and a testing of courage. Dante finally spoke, his voice lower now, stripped of mockery. "You see more than anyone else, Isabella. That is dangerous." Isabella's heart pounded. "And you," she whispered, "are more than anyone believes. That is dangerous too." The crowd shifted uneasily, sensing the tension, the unspoken connection, and the hidden power play. No one dared break the silence. Then, from the far corner, a voice quiet, almost a hiss, spoke. "So, she survived." The words carried threat, curiosity, and something more ominous. Isabella's eyes flicked to the speaker. It was someone from her past, someone who knew the stakes. And now, the challenge had just begun. Dante's gaze returned to her, and for a heartbeat, the world shrank to the space between them. He raised his brow, a question unspoken, lingering in the air. Isabella swallowed. She had come for revenge, for truth, and for justice. But she had also discovered something unexpected. That even in the shadows, even against the most dangerous man in the city, there could be connection. The ballroom held its breath. The night was far from over. And neither Isabella nor Dante realized how much this single dance had set in motion. Power, love, danger, and redemption now twisted together in a single, fragile thread, one that could bind them or destroy them both. As the chandeliers flickered once more, the shadow from her past stepped closer. The next challenge was not the dance. It was survival, trust, and the choices that lay between vengeance and something she had not yet dared to name. And in the silence, Dante's hand still held hers. The question lingered between them, unspoken yet undeniable. Who would lead? Who would follow? And who would fall in the dance that had only just begun? The night had deepened, and the city outside the Moretti mansion seemed to hold its breath, as if the events within had reached beyond walls and windows. Inside the grand hall, the echoes of the tango still lingered, vibrating like a quiet storm beneath the marble floors. Isabella could feel it in her bones. The dance had changed something, not only in her, but in Dante as well. She had thought the ballroom would be her battlefield, her stage for revenge. Yet now, it felt more like a mirror. Every step she had taken, every movement she had made, had reflected more than skill. It had reflected truth. And truth, she realized with a mix of fear and awe, was far more dangerous than any weapon she could wield. Dante remained close, his eyes constantly on her. There was something in his gaze that unsettled her, not fear, not mockery, but an intensity that made her pulse quicken. The laughter and whispers of the guests had long since faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. The crowd had begun to sense it. The tango was not merely a performance. It was a revelation. A servant approached cautiously, bowing low. "Signor Moretti, the gala is at its end, but there are unexpected guests arriving." His voice trembled slightly, betraying the tension that now gripped the room. Dante's sharp gaze flicked toward the doorway. "Unexpected guests?" he asked. His voice was calm, but the slight tightening of his jaw hinted at something more. "Show them in." Isabella's heart skipped. She had felt the shadow in the corner before, had sensed the presence of someone who knew too much about her past. Could this be the same threat, moving closer, drawn into the light now? The doors opened, and a figure stepped inside. Not a single person gasped, not out of fear or surprise, but out of quiet recognition. The newcomer's eyes locked on Isabella immediately. A history of betrayal, loss, and unfinished business stretched between them. She swallowed, holding her breath. The room felt smaller. Every whisper of silk and every glint of light intensified. Dante, however, did not waver. He moved slightly forward, protective and commanding, though not in the violent way his reputation suggested. There was a new tension in the air, one that combined danger and attraction, fear and fascination. "Who is she?" Isabella whispered under her breath. "Someone who has unfinished business with you," Dante murmured, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "And perhaps with me as well." The stranger approached, her movements careful, almost like a shadow in motion. Isabella's mind raced. She recognized the cold precision in the way this person walked, the same precision that had caused her family so much pain. Yet now, in the glow of the chandeliers, she also noticed hesitation. There was caution, uncertainty. Perhaps, like her, this visitor had been caught off guard by the night's strange energy. Dante's hand brushed lightly against Isabella's. Not a touch of ownership, not a gesture of dominance, but a tether-silent reassurance that she was not alone. Isabella felt the warmth of it, and for a fleeting moment, the anger and pain that had driven her to this moment softened. She realized that Dante was not only observing the world with calculated ruthlessness, but also responding to it with unexpected humanity. The music shifted once more. This time a soft, haunting melody that seemed to coil around the edges of the room. Without a word, Dante extended his hand toward Isabella again. Her fingers brushed against his, hesitant, then firm. He pulled her slightly closer, and the two began to move, not the formal steps of the tango from earlier, but a slow, cautious rhythm that felt like a conversation. Each step carried meaning. Every turn, every glide across the marble, revealed more than just physical skill. It revealed intention, unspoken truths, and emotions that neither could express aloud. Isabella felt the weight of the past pressing against her chest, the fear of betrayal, the longing for justice, but also the stirring of something unexpected. Perhaps it was trust. Perhaps it was curiosity. Or perhaps it was the first flicker of something she had not allowed herself to name: hope. Dante's gaze never wavered from her. For all his power, all his reputation, he moved with a vulnerability that contradicted the cold persona he displayed to the world. Isabella noticed it, and for the first time, she questioned everything she thought she knew about him. Could a man capable of destruction also be capable of love? Could a heart hardened by loss and duty still beat in rhythm with another's? The visitor from her past watched quietly, their expression unreadable. Isabella's mind raced. She had come prepared to face this person with confrontation and cunning. Yet now, the situation had shifted. The dance, the strange intimacy of movement and trust, had shifted the balance. She was no longer merely a seeker of revenge. She was a participant in something larger, something that demanded honesty, courage, and perhaps even forgiveness. Dante sensed the shift as well. His usual command over the room, the fear he inspired with a single glance, had little effect here. Instead, he responded to the subtle signals Isabella sent, adjusting his pace, mirroring her hesitation, and guiding her with strength tempered by care. Each step was a negotiation, a shared secret. Each turn and spin was a dialogue of trust and tension. The room seemed to shrink, the spectators fading into shadows. For Isabella, the world became only the space between them, the rhythm of the music and the heat of Dante's presence. She felt her walls, built high with pain and suspicion, begin to crumble. Yet even as she moved closer, she did not forget why she was here. Revenge had not abandoned her. It waited, a quiet ember beneath the warmth of unexpected connection. The visitor finally spoke, their voice cutting through the soft music. "I never thought I'd see you again, Isabella." She froze for a heartbeat, then composed herself. "Neither did I," she said, her voice steady, though her heart raced. "Why are you here?" "To watch," they replied, a faint shadow of emotion flickering across their face. "And to see if the girl who left could face the darkness she abandoned." Isabella's pulse quickened. She realized that this dance was no longer about Dante alone. It was about every choice she had made, every step that had led her to this moment. The tango, cursed or not, had become a reflection of her life, her struggles, and her potential for redemption or destruction. Dante twirled her suddenly, drawing her close. The movement was precise, yet effortless, like water flowing around obstacles. His eyes met hers, and she saw something raw in them. Not power, not cruelty, but vulnerability, and perhaps even longing. Her chest tightened. She had never imagined that the man who had taken so much from her could evoke such feelings within her. The visitor's presence reminded her that danger was never far. Yet, paradoxically, the dance provided a shield. Every step, every movement, was a declaration that she was alive, that she was capable of more than fear, more than vengeance. She could feel herself growing stronger, not just in body but in spirit. The music swelled, and Dante spun her once more. This time, their faces were so close that their breaths mingled. Isabella could see the faintest tremor in his expression, a crack in the armor that none but she could perceive. And she understood. In that quiet, electric moment, that the tango did not only reveal truth, it demanded it. "You're different from what I expected," Dante murmured, his lips brushing against her ear. "And I don't know what to make of it." Isabella's heart fluttered. For the first time, she did not see him as the enemy, nor did she see herself as the victim. They were participants in the same intricate game, each step carrying the potential to destroy or to heal. The final note of the melody approached, lingering in the air like a question without an answer. Isabella and Dante stopped, their faces inches apart. The room, the city, and the weight of the past seemed to hold still, waiting. The visitor from her past stepped closer, their eyes narrowing, a silent threat and challenge in one glance. Dante's hand remained on hers. Not commanding, not possessive, but steady, reassuring, protective. The silence stretched, and in that pause, Isabella felt something shift irrevocably. The dance had ended, but the consequences had only begun. The visitor finally spoke again, this time louder, a hint of warning in their tone. "So, the girl survived. And the man? He is not untouchable." Isabella's eyes met Dante's. He gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. There was understanding there. A recognition that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Not as enemies, not as victim and oppressor, but as equals, bound by a shared truth that had been revealed in the dance. The music faded completely. The crowd, once eager for scandal or mockery, was frozen, unsure of what they had just witnessed. The ballroom felt transformed, intimate and dangerous, charged with unspoken emotion and new possibilities. Isabella knew that the night had changed everything. Her past, her purpose, and her future had converged in the space between a dance and a gaze. She realized that she was no longer simply seeking revenge. She was seeking something more: redemption, truth, and perhaps connection. Dante's voice cut through her thoughts, low and steady. "The dance is over," he said. "But this is just the beginning." And in that moment, Isabella understood that the real challenge had only just begun. The shadows of the past, the dangerous allure of power, and the fragile stirrings of trust and desire were all waiting for her next move. The night outside continued, silent and watchful, as if the city itself knew that this dance had awakened something that could not be contained. The grand hall was quiet now, but the air still carried the weight of the night's events. The chandeliers glimmered faintly, casting golden light over the polished marble. Every guest, who had come expecting scandal or spectacle, now remained frozen in place, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Isabella stood near the center of the room, her chest still heaving from the dance. Dante remained by her side, his eyes locked on hers. Neither of them spoke at first. Words were unnecessary. The tango had revealed everything they needed to know about one another. Their truths were laid bare. And in that transparency lay a fragile understanding, a silent agreement that what had begun could not be undone. The visitor from Isabella's past moved closer, stepping into the light. Their face was serious, a mixture of challenge and curiosity. They had come, expecting confrontation, yet now they seemed uncertain. Isabella's heart thumped. She knew that the night's events had shifted the balance. The shadows that had once threatened her were no longer entirely her enemies, nor were they allies. They were witnesses to something that had changed the rules. Dante spoke first, his voice low but steady. "You came here thinking you understood the danger. But danger is not always what it seems. Some dangers are necessary to show us who we really are." Isabella met his gaze, understanding the weight of his words. She had come for revenge, for justice, for answers. But the dance had shown her more than she expected, that even in the presence of the man who had caused her family's suffering, there could be honesty, there could be courage, and there could be. The visitor's eyes flickered between them, studying Dante, then Isabella, then back again. "So this is why you survived," they said softly, almost to themselves. "Not because you were clever or strong, but because you found something no one else could see." Isabella nodded, feeling a strange warmth rise in her chest. She realized that the tango had not only tested her skill and courage, but had also tested her heart. She had confronted her fear, faced her past, and dared to see Dante not just as a powerful enemy, but as a man capable of more than the world expected. Dante stepped closer, his hand brushing lightly against hers. It was not a touch of dominance, but of connection, steady and reassuring. "The dance is over," he said. "But what comes next is far more important." The visitor looked from Dante to Isabella, a hint of admiration in their expression. "You've changed him," they said quietly. "Or maybe he's always been like this, and you just showed him the courage to be himself." Isabella felt her pulse quicken. The thought was both thrilling and frightening. Could a man like Dante truly be more than his reputation, more than the fear he inspired? Could he be capable of love, of redemption, of trust? Dante's eyes held hers, intense and unyielding. "I am not the man I was," he admitted, his voice softer now. "Not entirely. There is still darkness. But tonight, I saw something I have not seen in a long time. I saw truth, and with truth comes choice." Isabella's heart ached. She had spent so long preparing for revenge, so long believing that justice could only be found through confrontation and cunning. Yet here, in the quiet aftermath of the dance, she realized that there was another path. Forgiveness did not mean weakness. It meant courage. And perhaps, in the same way, love did not mean surrender. It meant strength. The visitor stepped back, giving them space. "I see now that whatever happens, this night will be remembered," they said. "Not for scandal or fear, but for courage." Dante and Isabella exchanged a glance. Neither of them spoke at first. Words were unnecessary. The night had revealed their truths. The dance had stripped away masks, leaving only honesty, vulnerability, and a fragile hope. Finally, Dante knelt. Not as a gesture of submission, not as a plea, but as a promise. His eyes remained on Isabella, unwavering, full of emotion he had never allowed anyone to see. "I will honor you," he said simply. "I will protect you, and if you allow it, I will stand with you, not as a mafia boss, but as a man who chooses you." Isabella's breath caught. She had expected arrogance, mockery, perhaps even cruelty. Instead, she found sincerity, strength, and the courage to be vulnerable. Slowly, she extended her hand, letting him lift her gently. The gesture was simple, yet it carried a weight neither had anticipated. The acknowledgement that they were equals, bound not by fear, but by trust. The crowd remained silent, watching the scene unfold. Some were shocked, some confused, but all were captivated. They had expected scandal and humiliation, yet instead they witnessed a quiet revolution of emotion and courage. The silence itself became applause, louder and more powerful than any words could be. Isabella and Dante stepped forward together, their movements synchronized, yet not a dance. It was a step into the future, into a possibility neither had imagined before. The visitor from her past watched, nodding slightly. Recognizing that the night's events had shifted more than just personal histories, they had shifted the balance of power, perception, and hope. Outside, the fog of the city swirled, reflecting the light of distant lamps. The streets were unchanged, yet the air felt different, as if the world had taken notice of the shift within the walls of the mansion. Change had begun, quiet and profound, seeded by courage, honesty, and unexpected connection. Dante and Isabella moved to the balcony, the cool night air brushing against their faces. They stood side by side, looking out over the city. No words necessary. Each could sense the other's thoughts, the emotions unspoken yet understood. There was still danger, still challenges ahead, but the fear that had once consumed them now felt tempered by strength and trust. Isabella turned to Dante. "Tonight, we faced more than the dance," she said softly. "We faced ourselves. One. He nodded, his expression unreadable for a moment before softening. "And we survived. Not because of skill or power, but because we chose to see the truth, even when it was frightening, even when it was dangerous." The city below seemed to hold its breath again, as if acknowledging the power of their choice. In that quiet moment, Isabella realized that the true challenge was never the dance, never the fear, never the revenge. The challenge had been to find courage, to confront truth, and to allow herself to feel something beyond anger and pain. Dante's hand found hers again, and this time there was no hesitation, no testing. Only trust, steady and strong. "You changed me tonight," he said. "Not entirely, perhaps, but enough. Enough to know that whatever comes, I want to face it with you." Isabella's chest tightened. Not with fear, but with hope. The night had revealed darkness. Yes, but also light, the possibility of redemption, of love, of a future built on honesty rather than fear. She realized that in facing the Tango, in facing Dante, and in facing her own heart, she had discovered a courage she did not know she possessed. The visitor from her past approached one final time. "Be careful," they warned. "The world will not understand this. But maybe that is not your concern anymore." Isabella smiled faintly. "No. Our concern is not the world. It is ourselves, and the choices we make." Dante's lips curved into a rare smile, the kind that softened the harsh lines of his face. "Then, let us choose wisely," he said. For a moment, they stood in silence, hand in hand, gazing at the city below. The night had been a crucible, burning away the masks and revealing truth. The tango, the laughter, the shadows, the challenges, all had led them here, to this fragile but undeniable connection. And then, as if the world itself acknowledged their choice, a quiet stillness settled over the mansion. The guests, the shadows, the city beyond all seemed to pause in recognition of something profound. No words were needed. No applause came. The silence itself was enough. The room had been silenced. The night had been conquered. And a new chapter had begun. Isabella looked at Dante, her eyes reflecting the glow of the chandeliers. "We survived the dance," she whispered. "Now, we face everything else." Dante nodded, his hand tightening slightly around hers. "Together," he said simply. And in that moment, the power, the fear, and the tension that had once ruled their lives were transformed. Through courage, honesty, and the fragile magic of connection, they had found something stronger than fear, stronger than revenge, and stronger than the world's expectations. The city remained cloaked in fog, the night stretching endlessly. But within the walls of the mansion, two hearts had discovered redemption. Two hearts that had faced the shadows and chosen each other. And in that choice, the night itself seemed to bow, silent and reverent, acknowledging that love and courage could conquer even the darkest of worlds.